Okay, well, this is our introduction video for Chapter 4. Administration wants us to do a video once in a while, or a video conference or something like that, just to touch base, and as if you really wanted to see this face. It's here. Decided to do it outside because I am trying to get some gardening work done, set up for the spring. So just taking a break right here to do this video. Again, I've said many times that Chapter 4 should be really a concluding chapter, because it deals with how government kind of deals with it around the periphery. We deal with the central bank, we did fiscal policy, but to deal with kind of the edges of the economy and how to keep it all together. And apart from the current situation that we are in economically, this is, kind of like how this should work. And so we're on pages 71, 72, kind of in our text. So if you want to follow along, grab the textbook, open it up to 71, 72. But, this is not going to be the Adam Smith view. The Adam Smith view is government should be nowhere near the economy. In fact, Smith only basically reluctantly agreed that the government, if it did not have a say in the matter, should just act as an arbitrator or neutral when two businesses have a dispute. So you have a court system, but if the government has a skin in the game, has stake in one of the businesses, that makes it unfair. So that's why it doesn't work that way. But that's why Smith was so far back from that. Now, this is not the case here. The book makes several good arguments as to how the government should act, and the first is to create a legal structure that allows fair and fair competition and allows innovation and gives you the freedom to move, but kind of like put it inside a box or put it inside a bubble that you can only go so far. So there has to be these kind of limits to caveat emptor, buyer beware, to laissez-faire. So there is a kind of protective bubble around it. Now, again, most first world countries have a good legal structure. Businesses are protected, consumers are protected. So there's enough there. Third world countries are what we're really going to worry about if you think about that for a second. But when competition gets thwarted by practices that are considered to be bullying or illegal. I mean, you have the whole history of the Sherman Antitrust Act in the 1890s coming out as a result of the big monopolization of certain industries. You have the trial of Standard Oil and the breakup of Standard Oil in the 1910-ish time period, which didn't monetarily hurt John Rockefeller. In fact, he made more money after the breakup of his company into the component parts. For example, Standard Oil of New Jersey, it became Exxon. Standard Oil of New York became Mobil, and then they remerged. Reformed. So you have that. Now, we have modern example of that, too. In 1984, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed the breakup or forced the breakup of AT&T. AT&T had an almost virtual monopoly of long-distance service, and there were startup companies like Sprint and MCI that were starting to try to push the envelope there, and they claimed it was unfair because the local phone service, the Bells, the Bell telephone companies, had that kind of same parental lineage as AT&T. So New Jersey Bell, Keystone Bell, Diamond State Bell, what they call the baby bells, the local Bell companies fed immediately into the long distance network of AT&T. So unless your local phone service wasn't provided by the Bells, which there were examples of it, even in my county, Bucks County, where I lived, the northern part of it had a different phone company. You didn't have access or choice. You had to take whatever they gave you. And long distance actually cost money. I mean, calling from our area to Trenton would cost money. You would have to wait until after 5 o'clock in the business day or 7 o'clock at night for long distance. The cheapest rates were actually after 11. So I'm at college at Northwestern, and my girlfriend is 1 year behind me in school, and she's in Levittown. And so I had to wait till after 11 o'clock my time to get the cheapest long distance rate, which means that she's answering the phone at midnight. So it was really messed up, and it stifled competition. And certainly we see that when competition comes in, whether it's for cell phone service or other communication services, that prices come down, quality service goes up. So you have that. Another thing that the government has to set up a system whereby you have what's called legal protections, like limited liability. And that's something, if you've taken the IBP course or business law course, you understand that incorporated entities stand alone by themselves in front of the court. So they have legal standing. So when something happens, a company comes in, like a company that comes in and does your remodel work on your house, and they do something wrong and break something, you could sue the company. But the individual people who work with the company, not so much, or the personal assets of the company's owners, you can't, sue them. So you have that protection that only the business assets can be sued, which is good because, if I start a business and I legally incorporate, I don't want them coming after my house because I made one mistake. Now, obviously, Jeff Bezos' stock values and his stock portfolio can suffer if you sue Amazon for something and you're successful, but you're not going to wipe out Jeff Bezos' personal wealth. You're not coming after his house, his car, or anything like that. And that gives you that kind of distance whereby businesses can operate on their own without having to worry about everything. Now, if you're not incorporated, if you just cut somebody's grass for money and a rock flies out and busts a window, you're responsible for that. And if you injure somebody, you're responsible for that. But that limited liability is just another example of how government can kind of design something around the economy, allow it enough flexibility and freedom, but yet give it the essential protection that it needs. Okay. All right. Second point we want to talk about here is the idea of monopolies and whether or not the government should have any say in breaking up monopolies. I mentioned a little bit about AT&T before, but there's a lot of other things to consider here for monopolies, such as public utilities. I mean, it would be grossly inefficient to have 5 water companies dig up the streets in East Brunswick to put a pipe to your house. And I don't think any companies would do that under those circumstances, because why would they wire up or put pipes down for an entire town if maybe they get 20% of the customers? And you're like, oh, today I'm going to choose this water company. Today I'm going to choose this water company. No, it's inefficient. So the government grants a monopoly status. It did in this township's case to Comcast. Time Warner, Cablevision, all the cable companies were producing, were pitching their bids to East Brunswick to wire up the town, and Comcast won. So Comcast has the exclusive here. Now, Verizon had the landline service exclusive. PSE&G for part of the town, and Jersey Central Power and Light for another part of the town has the electric monopoly. So that's, how that works. I mean, it's just inefficient. Sometimes, even though we hate monopolies, monopoly is the most efficient source. Now, the interesting thing about like Comcast and Verizon is the development of alternate technologies that you can get around this. I mean, this is where there's enough freedom to create Skype and voice over internet protocol programs like Vonage and to challenge Verizon. And we also know that you can have a cell phone, and the cell phone can be on a different network, and you don't really need a landline. I think a lot of millennials don't have landlines because they just use their cell phone for everything. So there's ways to get around that. But think about that for a second. It's just the most efficient way to do it. Secondly, it can in places be a force for creativity. If you think about about intellectual property, song lyrics and patents and logos, trademarks, all of those kind of things. If you're not protected and somebody down the street can copy your stuff and make money doing your stuff without paying you any royalties for it, why would you bother creating? I mean, it's just, why would you create if somebody can steal it? So most of the places in the world that respect intellectual property have to have a good sense of law and protections and go after knockoff Prada bags and Coach bags and go after bootleg CDs and go after people who download, songs on Napster. The government does have to set up that and allow companies to go after you legally for doing that. But it allows you the opportunity, as let's say, for example, a songwriter, to sell that song to any movie that wants to put it in a song, put their song in their movie soundtrack, to license out your play or your book for television, for film, for anything, any kind of performance. And you get the royalties for it. So, for at least up to 70 years after your death, your estate gets to claim that as well. So after that, it goes into the public domain. So you have all that intellectual property that also gives you the freedom to create, but it also kind of reins in when that creativity ends. Fair use, for example, parodies. If you're doing a Saturday Night Live skit of something, there's kind of that kind of stuff going on too. I addressed that when I taught the IBP class. I was the one who really got into that with that. So that's like a whole big point about monopolies that we need to address. All right, so let's go next to the third kind of point here. Oh, actually, there's one more point with monopolies. What happens about a natural monopoly? Just good business practice. I mean, most of the computers in the world run on Windows software. Did they do things illegally? There were a couple of lawsuits where they kind of, with the bundling and click-through links, like if you click a hyperlink in a Word doc, it automatically went to Internet Explorer or Edge, but you can reset it and set it to go to whatever browser you want. But a natural monopoly is something just good business practice. What happens if somebody dominates like that? I mean, Microsoft runs 80% of the world's computers or more. Hey, yay, good job. But unless you're going to create a whole new system like Linux and do open source coding, that's what happens. All right, so the last part, and sorry about that little jump there, but the last part that we'll talk about here about government and the economy is the redistribution of income. And you get that through a progressive taxation structure where the more you make, the more they're going to bite, and then kind of redistribute it and funnel it back into the economy, funnel it back to schools, funnel it back to social welfare programs. And, that's, definitely something that is interesting. I mean, I'm tempted to take, there's Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize winning economist, whose book was my second choice. If I couldn't get the McConnell Brew book, was my second choice for this class, is doing a master class online, and I'm tempted to take it just to say, kind of pick his brains about these subjects of the redistribution of wealth. And he's made some comments about the fact that the healthcare system needs basically to go into a Bernie Sanders mode, this kind of one single payer provider kind of thing. So interesting to see how that. But the taxation is pretty much the way you do that. Now, the government can also intervene in the market like it did if it becomes part of an antitrust lawsuit against a monopoly like AT&T, or it can intervene when it comes to, for example, the current situation, whether or not Trump is going to seriously enforce the Stafford Act, which is a 1950 law which during the Cold War could kind of put up war production. That is, you're not going to focus on this product. You're going to focus on this because we need it more for the country. For example, I mean, just as a market force, Bauer and other companies, hockey companies in Canada, have stopped making hockey equipment, are making face shields for the hospitals and medical professionals, and they're trying to crank out thousands per day. And Bauer already has an order for 1 million. So, they're going to, instead of making hockey equipment, are going to do that. Fanatics is the company that does a lot of the sports memorabilia, sports jerseys and stuff. They're going to make, kind of like garb for, not sterile garb, like, perfectly, for really hardcore medical professionals, but for the, the casual medical professional like that who just needs a mask or just a smock. So, you have that. You have the social safety net, and I think we all have to kind of understand that social cohesion is an important part of it here. The social cohesion, if God forbid something goes really wrong, and there you have riots in the streets because the government just decides that we're not going to take care of the poor, we're not going to, it could have some really serious implications. I mean, anybody who's studied the French Revolution knows that that's part of the reason why the revolution got so vicious, so bloody, and why the sans-culottes basically blew the whole place up, because nobody cared about them and they were a majority of the population. I mean, it might have political ramifications in November. Granted, so we see how, if we're up and around doing elections in November. Certainly, George W. Bush took a lot of heat for his kind of lack of sympathy for the people of New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, because, there's the whole city that's basically underwater. And, the administration kind of took this attitude. And a lot of black people said, what, Republicans don't care for us. So if you disenfranchise people and you disconnect from people, by not taking care of the people, you could run into some serious problems there. So again, in that way, you have the taxation, you have the social safety net, you have the market intervention going on, and the government can play a heavier role, although it really doesn't want to. And I can understand that being more of a Republican-Democratic split, universal health care being a Democratic kind of thing, laissez-faire Republican. So I can kind of understand that. All right, so that's our kind of introductory look at chapter 4. Take some time, work on your session presentations. We're gonna try to figure out a way to kind of upload them, maybe as an oral recording, an audio recording, and then I will assign people to listen to certain ones. You again would have to listen into the 3 other presentations, plus my presentation on the 37-38 recession, which I've narrated my PowerPoint, and I'll have the PowerPoint, and then click the audio, and you can kind of follow along as I go through my PowerPoint. It takes about 25 minutes, I think, 25 minutes. So, all right. Other than that, I'm out here gardening today because it's going to be about 60 degrees. I got to start turning over ground. I got to start planting. I already planted my zoysia grass. You can see in the background here behind me, those kind of yellowish plugs. That's zoysia grass, which grows really well in the sunshine, very little rain, and it spreads out quick. So I'm trying to get that done to fill up some bare patches in my yard. So trying to keep busy. So hopefully all your folks and family are well. You are well, and we'll probably see you after the spring break with some kind of video conference or something.